Today we'll see with the very important topic, and we can say it as a data stage hardcore concept. It's like heart of data stage we see. See, these are the configurations in the tools tab. When you go for the configurations, you can see the list of nodes. So first to discuss with configuration, we'll discuss with node. So what is a node? In the row generator concept, I just given one word telling you that node means nothing but a logical CPU. Now, the same node I'm just making copy and paste in notepad. The size made it too large. Okay, I hope this is fine. Okay, so here, if you try to understand, so node means it's a logical CPU. First, I'll give you a definition like what is node. This is node one is node name. This is node name. And fast name. This is your computer name. Computer name. And pools, resource disk, scratch disk. I'll tell you first what is resource disk and resource scratch disk. And later on we'll discuss. So resource disk means permanent hard disk. Permanent hard disk. What is resource crash disk means? It is temporary hard disk. I'll tell you. See, normally when you go for host name, I'll just open my computer properties. So this is computer name. If you ask, this is your computer name, and in this you have hard disk. This is your space, hard disk space, 10 GB, 100 GB, and you have processor even. You have processor. So that is one CPU. The same way here also, node means it is a CPU. Node means it is a CPU, and this is a CPU name. So this is your fast name. As we have in the computer, my computer only I have this logical CPU, and this should be installed on my machine. So the computer name, fast name is the same computer name that I have physically. And this is my permanent hard disk path. Means the data in the data stage will store in the resource disk. Data means jobs, I mean the files, the stores in data sets format. We discussed, right, while discussing data set, we discussed about the back process. Means in the data stage, the backend process, which will data store in which format means binary format. And data set also reads in binary format. So here also, the same concept we are discussing. Resource disk means it's permanent memory. Fast name is computer name. Pools means it will act like operating system. Means like operating systems in the sense it will control this resource disk and resource crash disk. Manages resource disk and resource crash disk. What kind of data should store in resource disk and what kind of data should store in resource crash disk. For example, I'll tell you, see, for example, I'm running this job. Assume that I have a sort stage or a filter stage. Okay, I'll do calculation or I'll take merge. No, not merge. I'll take aggregator, for example. So in this, I'm taking department number. So department number, I'm taking 10, 20, 30, 40, such all information, correct? 10, 20 and 30. Now, the output should be sum of cell. Okay, I hope you understood what is node and what is, this is node name, this is past name, computer name, pools, resource disk, which is permanent memory, and resource cache disk, which is a temporary memory. Okay, pools which manages this hard disk and hard disk, resource cache disk. Okay, so now I'll just delete this and minimize. For example, I'm writing a query, select star from EMP. Select sum of cell, department number from EMP. Group by department number. I'm getting 10th department at 8,750. I shown you in the aggregator even. Okay, while discussing aggregator, we discussed the same query in Datastage how to implement. Okay, now I'm going to select star from EMP order by department. Okay, to retrieve this data based on this query functionality, what it should do? First, it should take 10th department records and it should calculate sum. It should do sum. It should perform sum on these three salaries. And next, 5 departments and 5 salaries. It should be sum calculated. And next, 30th department. And it should present the order in this way. Means it should have some temporary memory. If I give a mathematics exam in our academics even, they'll give rough place. On your right hand side you can give a margin, and after the margin on the to the margin on right hand side you can use it as a rough notes. Means you can calculate some of part of there and you can bring the answer and put it in the answer sheet. The same way here also, the answer sheet is like hard disk. The answer sheet is like hard disk, permanent memory which stores, and resource crash disk your rough place. Means logically you should have some space to do calculations. So that is what your resource crash disk, which is your temporary memory, which is your temporary memory that we are discussing. Then what kind of data should store in this resource disk and what kind of data should store in crash disk will be maintained, managed by pools. And in some cases, you might scratch disk required more, means there is more volume of data, more calculations or more joint concepts, means you need to look up the data and you need to bring the matching of from the left or from lookup tables and all. You should have more scratch disk, then automatically at runtime you should increase your scratch disk. Then in that concept even pools will help us with extra memory spaces. That's what we say, resource disk and resource cache disk with pools. If you want extra, means at runtime, automatically it will figure with some space. That will be done through architect at the installation concept, at the installation level. Architect and admin will, no, data station admin will sit together and discuss these things, and estimation will be done according to the data and the business cases and what kind of stages we are using and all such information. So node is in a logical CPU. So one interview they ask you, in node, what is the structure of the node? The fast name, pools, resource disk, resource cache disk. Then fast name means what? It is a simply computer name. Even a logical CPU will have a name. And pools which manages a resource disk and resource crash disk. If you want to increase the resource disk, you need to define pools, the path. And resource crash disk which you want to specify, then we should have a pools. So this is what about your logical CPU. And in this logical CPU, for example, if I'm running with a two-node concept, this is single node. This is node 2. So two-node concept. Then if I have 10 records, how these two, see if I have data of a file, it will store in hard disk. That is what we made partitions, right? We made partitions of C drive, D drive, E drive. If you have more memory, we can make it, right? If you have 2 terabytes of hard disk, then we can make 4 the partitions and we can store the data in 4 different partitions. You are storing. The same way here also you can store the data within the node to run the data from source to target. So in this case, if I have 10 records or 20 records, if I have 2 nodes, how the data is going to split? Node 1, maybe if 20 records, if you have 10 records will flow here and 10 records will flow here. Means it will make partition. And how many nodes can be? Any number of nodes can be present. And if it having even number of record nodes, it will be more effective to split the records in between them. For example, I have 8 node and I have 64 records. So in each node it will be splitted 8 into 8, means 8 records into each node. But the memory speed and the RAM speed that you have, based on that you need to, the volume of data that you are handling, based on these all scenarios and cases that you need to make sure how many nodes should be defined based on the capacity of the servers and all. That will be again the work of architect, Datastage architect. It's not regarding as a developer having like 8 years experience even. You might not get chance to work in defining a node concept. Maybe Datastage architect who is having 12, 15 years of experience, maybe in that cases, people will allow to define the nodes. If you want to define a node, you should understand the complete architecture, where it is not that much simple. Even I didn't involve any time in this node configuration concept. But the server will be defined, predefined, and you can work on that server with these nodes. So when you have 10, 20 records and 10 records are splitting into each node and flowing the data, that is what your node concept, to store the data, to flow the data from source to target. So within the data stage, without a node, even a single node, it should be present to flow the data from source to target. Without single node, even you cannot, the data cannot move. The data cannot move to the target. That is the reason we say node as, not node, configuration file as heart of data stage. And this node information, this all information will be stored in which place means configuration file. In which file means configuration file. So configuration file we say it is as a heart of data stage. Means without this configuration file concept, you cannot move the data from source to target. That is the reason we say configuration as heart of data stage. And partitioning techniques are the next concept. Okay, we are moving 10 records into node 1 and 10 records into node 2. But which 10 records should flow into which node? That is defined through partitioning techniques. That is defined through partitioning techniques. If you use DB2 in one way, entire in another way, hash in separate way, modulus in a different way, random either way, range, some levels of the data flow will be present. So that is what your partitioning technique. So configuration file, how many configuration files if you want to know, if you have means, just go to configurations and see here. I have default and single node. Yes, default node is single node before. In the Datastage 8 version onwards, default node is single node up to 8.5. From 8.5 it is 2 node. Default node means 2 node. But 2 node means it is not exactly matching with our local or personal missions. That is the reason we make it into single node and work. That will help you to make the concept understand very easy. But in real time, the architecture of this configuration node concept will be in a different way, like SMP or MPP or cluster. Maybe in that cases, the concept will be different. In that cases, you don't need to bother or worry of the data flow between the nodes. But as a personal laptop, I just recommend to go with create a single node and run with a single node of your flow. And I have shown you how to create a single node even. Just select this, Control C by using default node. Go to new tab, copy it, paste it, and click on save as. And after saving, let's check. Check what it will do. It will execute that configuration file node, sorry, that single node configuration file, and give an output without warnings, without errors. Warnings can be 1 or 2 warnings will be there that regarding to the OS concept. We don't need to bother, but errors should not come. If errors are coming, then that node maybe it will not be proper. That is not in proper way. Means that configuration file you cannot use it. So you should choose and you should execute properly. See, for example, if I take a single node, which I executed in previous classes, single node, I'm just saying check. So when you check, it will execute. See now. So 0 warnings, 0 errors. But sometimes if warnings, maybe you face some warnings. That should not make any issue. Okay, that is not a problem with us. But errors should not be there. If errors are detected of one, that configuration file you cannot work with that configuration file. So this is a bit concept, a very bit concept of a configuration file. So what is a configuration file? If someone asks in interview, which holds the node information? Node information, because the node information will be stored in configuration file only. Without a configuration file, there is no node concept. If there is without a configuration file, there is a node concept. Without a node configuration file is not required. Means without a node, you cannot estimate the configuration file. You should have the configuration file. Even a single node, then only it is a configuration file again. So when you are running the job, you should have a configuration file. This is a very important point that you need to maintain. In Datastage, without a node configuration file, you cannot run. It can be single node, it can be 2 node, it can be 4 node, it can be 8 node, any number of node. It should work with the configuration file. So what is configuration file? Which holds the configuration node information. Sorry, not configuration file. Configuration file means it holds the information of a node concept. Node. So what is a node? Node is the logical CPU which is used to split the records in between the nodes. I mean, it will split, but how it will split, that is not in hand of a node or a configuration file. That is in partitioning techniques. The behavior of the stages. From one stage to another stage, the behavior get changes. Based on that, you need to choose your partitioning technique, appropriate partitioning technique to work properly, to flow the data properly. Because of this node concept or because of the partitioning techniques, nowhere your job get fails. Only the thing, the data get mismatches, the calculation get mismatches, the lookups may be failure, the lookup records may be failure, and the calculations may be mismatches. But apart from that, everything should be fine. So you cannot say that because of my wrong partitioning technique that I choose, my job got aborted. Such information is false. Because without your node, The splitting records between the node, maybe the job will run successfully, but the records may be not as expected. That is what you need to understand. The job values will be something mistake with your property sets in which in the stage, but it's not related to the partitioning techniques or the node information. The node should be proper. The configuration file should be in executable mode, means without errors and without warnings. Of course, warnings one or two, no problem. This is what about configuration file and a node concept. And in the next session, we'll discuss with partitioning techniques. The partitioning techniques will help you to understand the flow of the data between the nodes within the configuration file. And the configuration file advantages are more. I haven't discussed even 10%. I discussed only 1.1%, which is having the node information. But while migration, this concept is node concept helps us to move our data from one server to another server very easily using this configuration file. That is high level. We don't require that level up to that level now. Okay. So as a developer, if someone asks you what is configuration file, it is simple answer which holds the node information. What is a node? Which is a logical CPU. A logical CPU which splits the records between those nodes. That's it. How it splits? That is partitioning technique. That concept we'll see in the next session. Thanks for watching this video.